It always starts the same way. She looks at you, not as you are, but as who she imagines you might become. You feel it in her eyes, don't you? That flicker of hope. Or is it hunger? You think you're being seen, but you're not. You're being measured, assessed, scanned. Like a blank canvas she's about to paint her masterpiece on. But here's the truth. No one told you. The masterpiece isn't you. It never was. Carl Jung, not a love guru, not a pickup artist, but one of the deepest minds in psychology, warned about this. Not with soft words, but with the sharp, surgical precision of a man who spent his life staring into the psychological abyss of the human soul. Jung's life was devoted to mapping what he called the unconscious, that vast, silent part of the mind that operates beneath our awareness. And he discovered something terrifying. He found that women don't just fall in love with men. They fall in love with the idea of men, the fantasy, the projection. And the scariest part? Most of them don't even realize they're doing it. Imagine you're standing in a room. You think she's looking at you, but in reality, she's looking through you, past you, at some invisible version of you that exists only in her mind. She's casting you in a role you never auditioned for, in a movie you didn't even know you were in. You think she's choosing you, but what she's actually choosing is the character she's built in her imagination. A puppet, a psychological mask. And when you stop fitting her script, she doesn't change the story, she changes the actor. Jung had a name for this projection, the Animus, the inner masculine image that lives inside every woman. When that animus is immature or unchecked, it becomes a tyrant. It makes women chase dangerous men and reject good ones. It makes them argue without reason, dominate without wisdom, and moralize without accountability. Jung didn't sugarcoat this. He called it a spiritual possession, a state where the woman isn't acting from her own consciousness anymore, but from the shadowy grip of that inner masculine fantasy. And men? You fall for it, over and over, because no one taught you to spot it. You confuse being desired with being known. You mistake being chosen with being understood. You believe her when she says you're different. But you're not different. You're just the latest face she's cast in a role she's been rehearsing since childhood. When the fantasy collapses, when the mask slips, you're left confused, betrayed, humiliated. You think you did something wrong. You didn't. You just stopped being a convincing actor in someone else's play. Jung warned that the only way out of this psychological theater is through what he called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole within yourself. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men never start that journey. Why? Because you've been trained to chase approval, to let women define your worth, to mold yourself into whatever shape will get you chosen. And as long as you do that, you will keep playing the same role and getting replaced when the audience gets bored. Individuation isn't glamorous. It's brutal. It requires you to confront the weak, insecure, broken parts of yourself. It demands that you stop blaming women for not seeing you and start seeing yourself. Because here's what Jung knew. You don't become a man by being chosen. You become a man by choosing yourself. Picture a man walking alone through a silent forest at night. Every shadow feels alive. Every step feels heavier than the last. That's what individuation feels like, walking alone into the dark corners of your own mind until you stop running from what you see there. A man who has faced his unconscious cannot be seduced by projection. He is no longer a puppet in someone else's fantasy. He becomes the author of his own reality. But here's the tragedy Jung saw in modern men. They're so desperate for approval that they betray themselves before anyone else even asks them to. They bend like wet clay into whatever shape they think will be accepted. They stop being men and start being masks. And women sense this, more than you could possibly imagine. The very things you think will make her love you. Obedience, predictability, availability are the same things that will make her lose attraction. Why? Because the feminine isn't drawn to comfort. It's drawn to mystery, to a man she cannot fully define or control. The moment you make yourself completely predictable, you don't become more lovable. You become invisible, disposable, replaceable. Here's the paradox that keeps men enslaved. You fear being alone more than you fear being fake. You'd rather lose yourself than lose her. But Jung taught that until a man embraces solitude, he will never be free. It's like standing on a cliff with no one behind you, just the wind, the void, and your own heartbeat. That's the place you must learn to stand without trembling. Individuation requires you to die before you die, to let the false versions of yourself burn, so that something real can finally emerge. But here's the part nobody says out loud. It's lonely. Terrifyingly lonely. As you walk that path, you'll begin to see things you can't unsee. You'll notice the games people play, the masks they wear, the lies they tell themselves to feel safe. And when you try to share what you've seen, they'll mock you. They'll call you cold, arrogant, too serious. But you're not the problem. You're the mirror. And people hate the mirror when it shows them something they don't want to face. Jung knew this. He spent decades with patients terrified to confront their own shadow, the dark, rejected parts of their psyche. He warned that women, especially in certain cultures, are often rewarded for avoiding that confrontation, told they are pure, intuitive, complete as they are. But Jung didn't buy it. He said the greatest danger to women was their unconscious animus, that inner masculine voice speaking with false certainty, false authority, false moral superiority. If she doesn't face and integrate it, she becomes a prisoner to it. She projects it onto every man she meets, blaming them for the war she refuses to fight within herself. And you think you're her savior. You think if you love her hard enough, prove yourself loud enough, perform well enough, she'll finally choose you for you. But that's not how projection works. Projection is a thief. It steals reality and replaces it with illusion. One day, the woman who once saw you as her hero will see you as her enemy. Not because you changed, but because you failed to fulfill the fantasy she cast on you. She won't even realize she's doing it. Jung said this betrayal is inevitable when neither person takes responsibility for their inner world. You didn't betray her. You simply failed to live up to a myth you never agreed to play. And here's where most men stop listening, because this is where the comfort ends and the responsibility begins. Jung didn't give easy answers. He didn't give 3 steps to alpha status. He gave one brutal task: self-confrontation. To sit alone in the silence of your own mind until the illusions crack, until the voice that says you're nothing without her finally dies. And make no mistake, that voice will fight for its life. But Jung's work whispers something dangerous. The man who can stand without her, without applause, without being needed, is the man who is finally free. And when you reach that place, you don't become cold. You become real, grounded, fully alive in your own skin. And here's the paradox. That's when women will be most drawn to you. Not because you need them, but because you don't. And you'll see her differently too. Not as a goddess to worship, but as a human on her own journey, fighting her own shadows. And if you're lucky, one day you'll meet a woman who has faced her animus, who has burned through her illusions. And when she meets you, she won't ask you to perform. No masks, no scripts, just truth. That kind of love, Jung said it's the rarest and most dangerous kind, because it's born not of need, but of freedom. Most men will never experience it. They'll settle for the fantasy, settle for performance, settle for the safety of a script. But if you have the courage to keep walking, to keep stripping away every false layer, you will eventually meet yourself. And when you do, you will finally be free. If this message hit you somewhere deep, don't just scroll away. Like this video. Share it with a man who's still trapped in the illusion. Subscribe for more truths the world doesn't want you to hear. Because the work of becoming a man was never hers to do. It was always yours.